Peter, how are you doing today?
Great, and thanks, David. I'm actually in the UK, but because my clients are in America, I work an Eastern time zone. So in my head, it's kind of half six, and it's kind of 1:30 at the same time. So it's either way. It's glad to be here, and it's an honor to be speaking to so many amazing, inspiring young adults here today. It's fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And what I'll say is, Peter, I still don't know when you do sleep because you're always responsive to me, but I know you're also doing a UK schedule, so it's incredible the bandwidth that you have and employ. So maybe you can
And,
give us some tips
and
on
two
that
kids,
as well when we do
two
time
kids as
management.
well. Yeah, I would say I actually wanted to answer a question from the chat before I gave everybody a bit of a story. Somebody said, "How do we know if an interview goes well?" That's the simplest question we're going to deal with today. The answer is ask them. The answer is ask them. I think one of the things that people build in this space is this us and them mentality, this interviewer interviewee, and it's not. It's a meeting of people. They need you guys as much as you need them, right? That they're trying to hire a role because they need that role filled. So this is just a meeting of people. So ask them, and it's the only way you're going to improve is to get the feedback as well. Sometimes it won't be positive, sometimes it will, but great either way as long as you're learning. But David, I actually want to tell you a story that I don't actually think you know about me, from everything we spoke about. So um, to give it, I'm gonna fast forward to the end and then go back to the beginning. So for everybody's reference, the last company I ran turned over 600 million, and we were the leading product of a company called Gartner that rates different IT solutions, and we were best in breed in the hotel world. So that's the end of the story. Now let me jump you back to the beginning of the story. At the beginning of the story, my IT teacher flunked me in college, and I punched him in the face. I am not advocating that. But what happened as a result of that is somebody that was projected to go on to Oxford or Cambridge to read IT was suddenly thrown out of college. I was literally out of school. Didn't have my A levels, didn't have my qualifications, and I was out of school. And I had a good background, a privileged background, but I still had this monumental feat facing me, whereby my parents were pretty certain I shouldn't live at home unless I wanted to earn money, which at the time seemed ridiculous and crazy to me, but in retrospect now seems kind of smart. Um, they wanted me to do some things, I didn't want to do some things, and I knew I wanted to go into IT. That's where I knew where my heart belonged. And I walked down to the Internet World Show, the very first ever Internet World Show in 1992 in Olympia. And I walked up to every single stand. And I walked up to every single stand and said, I have no qualifications, but I have a bucket load of passion. And I have the courage to stand in front of you and ask you what it would take for you to give me a job. Um, and I got 197 no's. 197. The last stand, literally the last stand, I went back to the coffee shop and went, this isn't working. This is not what I was expecting. I was expecting to walk in and everyone threw money at me. That didn't happen. So I went and had, I'll call it a coffee, but it wasn't because I was slightly underage, but let's say it was a coffee. And I thought, okay, how am I going to do this? This is not working. So I walked up to this last man. It was a guy called Tom Bell, who became one of my mentors. And I said to him, it's Tom, isn't it? Yeah. I went, and you're the managing director of Inform. And he said, yeah. And I said, I've just asked 197 people for a job and they said no. And I think they're wrong. So I want to make this really simple. I want to work for you for free. And he went, sorry? I said, I want to work for you for free for 2 weeks. I want you to pay for my bus fare and I want you to pay for my lunch so I don't lose money. But I will come work for you for free for 2 weeks and I'll prove to you that this is gonna happen. And he said, okay. And if it wasn't for that one guy saying yes, my whole life could have been very, very different. But it took 197 no's to get one yes. And the one thing I'd say to everybody is that every single person, and yes, interviewing is hard, and yes, finding a role is hard. And Alison is absolutely right. It is not the easiest thing to do in the world. But there's 130, I can't even count. There's so many people listening to this, and I'm willing to bet every single one of you have done something harder than this. And you're still here and you're still standing. So is this really that hard? Yeah, it's going to be tough, but it doesn't have to break you. If you can get through whatever that thing was for you, whether it was a relative passing away or a bad situation at school, if you're still standing at the end of that, this is just a process. And if you commit to the process, the outcome becomes inevitable. You will risk get a job, and guaranteed, if you continue through the process, it will work. So yeah, Dave, before you ask me any questions, I don't actually think you know that I flunked college from everything we've done.
No, I've not. I mean, I think Dawa got a little nervous when you dropped the first like punch, but then after that,
definitely not recommended. Definitely
yeah.
not recommended.
I was trying to read body language and everything else, but I think you ironed it out along the way. No, incredible story, and I think the message is crystal clear that this is really a process, and we all have a lot of greatness inside of us, and it's just a matter of bringing that out and learning how to do that. And I think a lot of what we're working on with everybody here today is just that. So thank you for that. Dawood, I don't know if you wanted to share your feedback or reaction.
I totally love that. And look, what I always find interesting is you look at people who've at some level kind of made it in their career, and you always think that they started somewhere that was different than you. Actually, not at all. If I trace my career back, I tripped up like over and over and over again. I failed my A-levels, had to do them again. I screwed them up a second time, had to do them like a third time. I mean, you know, you would not have given me, you'd have given me like zero chance of making it anyway, in all honesty. And you know, I talk to a lot of people, and the point of the matter is when you fail and then you pick yourself up, it's often in that learning in there that you find that the grit and the resilience. So wherever you are, I will say this to you, wherever you are, if you are one of the 137 people on this call, wherever you are, you can make it from where you are. You might be looking at yourself saying, you know, yeah, everyone else has it. I just don't know. They don't know that I, you know, that I flunked this or I failed that or I'm not good at this or that. Don't tell yourself that, because I tell you what, I know more people than you can count who started in that position and then made it to an incredible place. Not just got a job, but went somewhere incredible. Look at someone like Peter, look at Alice. I mean, all of us have a story. There's a backstory for absolutely everybody.
I love it. All right.
And as you said, it's literally everybody from Ford to Edison to J.K. Rowling to the people that every single person admires. You only admire the output, that end result. If you look back at the journey, it is messy, fraught, you know, indirect. It's ridiculous, and it's just a commitment. The people that succeed to me are always the people that have a commitment to that. To use a Tony Robbins language, but I think it translates here: constant and never-ending improvement. The people that have a commitment to, okay, I didn't do that right. I'm going to pick myself up, dust myself off, and I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to learn, and I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again. And eventually that path goes in the right place.
I love it. All right. So with that, I mean, Peter, I just, we're open to your knowledge and any kind of, I think, best practices you may have in terms of what should we be talking about and thinking about, either from branding perspective or best practices in interviews or things to prepare. I know there's a lot of questions sometimes on nerves. So any kind of insight you have that you think would be valuable to this audience, we're all ears, eyes, and many other things.
Yeah, I tried to write notes of everything I wanted to talk about, and I was like, okay, no, I need to cut that. I need to cut that. I need to cut that. So let's talk about digital first, because that's where I've spent most of my life. Because that really is actually super simple, which is on every single network that you're on, that is even remotely connected to your name or your face, make sure your settings are private. And if you're an aspiring YouTuber, put it on hold for a couple of months. And come back to it after you've secured this part of your life. And I would say exactly the same advice to somebody that was wanting to be the best NFL quarterback in the world. That's fantastic, but get high school sorted first, and then go back to this. Because one of the things I put here is and I actually spent a year running an electronic recruitment company. You want attention. You desperately want attention, because without attention, you can't get anywhere. But you only want it when you can control the conversation around it. Right? What you don't want is attention which you can't see, because as Alison and David are looking through 100 CVs and this one thing sticks out, they then get to craft, or not obviously Alison and David, but they then get to craft that narrative in their head. And you want that to be the thing you want it to be, not the thing you don't want it to be. So go onto your Facebook and make it private, make your post private just for your friends, go onto the same with Twitter and keep those things private. Then the second thing in regards to online is Google your own name. Right? So it's really simple. Literally put it in quotes, put your name in, see what comes up. And some of the things you'll probably be a little bit shocked at. Some of the things you're like, how is that there? So then you can do what's called a DMCA takedown, Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown, which is where you literally fill in a form. It's totally free. You can Google it, content takedown, and you can request that content is removed from Google's index. Google will keep anything there that's regarded as being in the public interest. So it'd be very, very hard to do for a company. If like a company was found guilty of defrauding someone, incredibly hard. But for an individual, super, super simple, because Google, especially in Europe, is very, very concerned with GDPR and various other pieces of legal stuff that's going to make them have to play ball. So remove it if you can, but if you can't remove it, at least know that it's there. So that if you hear and hint it coming up in the meeting, in the interview, and I prefer to call them meetings, not interviews, because I prefer the dynamic of a meeting. So if I use those phrases interchangeably, I apologize. But if you hear it coming up, you can at least address it. Now, that to me sits in a bigger sphere of, as Alison said, being as prepared as you can. Now, I used to take that to a whole different level when I was suggesting, when I was in recruitment, always be half an hour early and then go and have a coffee or go and have a tea. Don't be half an hour early, because actually if you're that much early, it's actually a little bit imposing, but turn up early. Remove the chance that you can't find the door. Remove the chance that you can't find the street. Remove the chance that you missed the tube. If you can, stay at a friend's house that's nearby. I mean, literally, whatever can go wrong, remove it from the space. Eat at the right time. Go to the toilet before you walk in. Just get rid of all those things that can cause a no before you're starting to try and get a yes. And I think that starts, exactly as Alison said, every single candidate that's progressed with me has researched, every single one, because it shows that they want it. It shows that they're actually concerned with it. But yeah, I would actually go one step further than Alison as well. I would research the individual as well, if you can, if you know the person, the name you're coming to meet, because that shows another level of it. But yeah, be early and control the narrative. So when we talk about attention, if you like, please don't put on your CV, please don't put, I like watching movies and talking with friends and socializing. Because it is like, yeah, so does everybody. That doesn't mean anything. If you like fire juggling, please put it, because you actually, I know this might sound a bit silly to some of you, but you actually want to get a laugh more than you want to get ignored, right? If someone reads down your CV and goes, fire juggling, what the hell do you do fire juggling for? You've now got a conversation. And that's the point of these points of principle, which is, I think, what David's talking about when he's talking about your why, like, why are you here? What are you doing? These tiny things. Like, I remember interviewing for a PA once, and she had on her CV a certificate in bank robbery. And I said, you've been certified in how to rob a bank? And she went, no, I lived in South Africa, so I was certified in how to be robbed. And we ended up having like this is obviously a fair while ago, but we ended up having like a good half an hour conversation about South Africa and the various different troubles there. And I don't think I ever spoke about her skills, her experience, or anything else. And I hired her and she stayed with me for 3 years because that connection was formed over this irrelevant subject. And when I talk about connection, I think there's something else I want to touch on quickly. When I said they need you as much as you need them, and some of my other panelists, if I made you cringe with the thing with the head mark, this might be even worse for you, but every single company might be hiring, but it's also the individual that's hiring as well. So what is that person's goal? And I can tell you that person's goal in any business, in any industry, in any walk of life, their goal is simultaneously two things: to look good in their company and to not look stupid in their company. There are the two things they are trying to achieve, because they have their careers, they have their dreams, they have their goals. So if you ask yourself that question, which is why I said research the individual, if you're sitting in front of Alison, what is it that makes Alison look good? What is it that's going to make Alison look stupid? If you can answer those two questions, Alison, it's in her interest to go, yep, I want to promote you, because by promoting you, I look good. I'm not saying that Alison is as transactional as that, or any individual, but at the back of people's mind, that's what's happening. People are going, okay, if I recommend this guy for the job, is he going to let me down? Hence why I said, don't be late. If you're late, people will assume that that's going to be, rightly or wrongly, it could be a 1 in a million day for you. But if you're late, people are going to assume that's going to continue throughout the course of your employment. Another thing in here that I really appreciate, if the interview's not going well, ask if you can start again. Just as I said, this is not interviewer, interviewee. This is not not headless aliens. This is other people that have also been through this same ordeal you're going through. If you turn around to me in an interview and say, I'm really not doing a good job of this, do you mind if I take 2 minutes and we start again? And in every single occasion, I'll go, sure. And if the person doesn't say sure, I guarantee you don't want to work for them. Because if they're not going to give you a break, then they're certainly not going to give you a break later. So that would be kind of how I would phrase all this. And you asked me to talk about nerves quickly. I've tried to get through all this, so I hope it's all made sense. Nerves are linked to scarcity. It's either scarcity that you're not enough, or it's scarcity in terms of being able to get the job. And to me, the comfort blanket there comes from trusting the process. The interview tomorrow, you might not get. The one after it, you might not get. But if you continue to go through the process, I promise you, with the guidance of amazing people like this on this panel and the program that you're in, it will happen. It's just a guarantee. And if you truly believe that, you don't need to feel scarcity. So you don't need to feel nerves. You know, my dad used to tell me this, and I'm not saying this is good advice, but it kind of frames it. My dad used to say, make sure your first interview is one you don't want. And don't go and try and win the job. Just go and get used to the environment, because the unfair advantage is people that interview. Like, Alison, how many people, if you can come off your mic, how many people did you interview, say, last week?
30 something.
So 30 something times a 10-year career. Like the odds are so much more in Alison's favor than in your favor. So if you try and play the game, it just doesn't work. You're just going to lose. And I ran into this when I was talking to venture capitalists, exactly the same thing. They said, how many times have you pitched venture capitalists? I went, 3, 4. And they went, yeah, we did that in the last 18 minutes. It's like, okay, all right, okay, that's how this works then. But if you commit to the process, it's going to work regardless. And if you believe that, I don't think you need to feel nervous. So that would be my throughout. How did that land? I hope there was some value in there for somebody.
No, I mean, absolutely amazing. I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat, and Peter just dropping nuggets of information. And I think we started this off saying you guys are probably going to weave a lot of different things together and hear some themes. And you spoke to what we talked about a long time ago, and what Dawood started this off with was features, advantages, benefits, and speaking to the benefit of the person you're in front of. Maybe it's looking them good, maybe it's having them not look bad, but that's really what you're trying to get your message to, is eliminate the no's, which is what you said, then work your way to a yes. And the yes often comes from, can you actually describe to that person how you can benefit them, the organization, and also not make them, which is the opposite of the good, not look bad. And so I thought that was all spot on, Peter. Dawood, what say you? How is this landing for you?
I'm totally loving it. I'm making notes here. I have a very specific question, Peter, around LinkedIn. So obviously there's the magic 500 number. You hit 500 and then everyone's like, okay, this person's like a ninja. They got 500. You got like 232. They're like, okay, they just started out. It's just the way it is, right? There's unconscious bias. Like if you have 200 connections, although I have to say, one of the most influential guys I know, full stop, anywhere on the planet, has like 6 connections on LinkedIn, but he's like the exception that proves the rule. Yeah. But what would you say to someone who just doesn't know that many people yet? They can't reach out to 500 people. How do you go about building good connections and just starting that process? And maybe Alison as well, I'd love to hear from you after Peter. Just, LinkedIn, how should we be just a few points around LinkedIn and how important it is? Is it important? Does it matter? How should you be looking at it?
So thank you. So I would say that yes, it's important. And I'd say the way to bring in connections on LinkedIn is super useful and super easy. I just join groups on LinkedIn, comment on people's posts, join in the conversation, and then follow them and expect a follow back probably about 1 in 3, 1 in 4 times. The thing about social media that I always find quite amazing is everybody, and I mean this, like multi-million, billion-dollar companies that I consult with are saying, how do we use social media? How do we target social media? How do we do this? How do we do this? It's like, you really think that algorithms that have like trillions of hours worth of computing power available per second, and you're going to beat them? Like, what level of, not you, but what level of arrogance are you playing in to say, I'm going to do this? No, the key is in the name. It's called social media. So be social. Like, I'm just be a good citizen of the platform. Like, just truly just be a good citizen of the platform. Like, the people whose names are appearing in the chat now, we all know are slightly more engaged than maybe somebody else that isn't. And that's the perfect example of, this is a semi-small version of an interview. Like, how often are people's names showing up? And it's interesting because the people's names that are showing up next to when I'm talking and when Alison are talking are very different. That's something that I find quite interesting and fascinating. So it's drawn my attention. And that's what I said about drawing people's attention. So LinkedIn, yes, absolutely, use it. Join groups that are subjects that interest you, that you have some value to add. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, if crypto is the thing that interests you, go into a crypto group in LinkedIn and say, how do you think this is going to change now we've had the election in the US, and watch people's answers. It's very easy to get those numbers up if you're an active, good citizen of Facebook / LinkedIn / Twitter / any of them. So that would be my advice on LinkedIn. I think you could get to 500 contacts by the end of the week if you sat down and did it.
Yeah, love it. Alison, what would you say? Thank you, Peter. That's super powerful.
I would say definitely with LinkedIn, you can get to 500. We have recruiters, they start with us, and I tell them the first challenge is get to 500 people in a week, and they do it like very quickly. You want to, when you're inviting people, you definitely want to have a note in there. And I'll tell you the trick that I've been using for years. I write, impressive profile, I thought we should connect. And it works every single time. Like, I find that that's a really good way to kind of get through people. And then the one that I find that is really helpful is Gary Vee's 180 strategy as well, which is you find influencers or whoever in your network, whatever niche that you are in, and you want to like, comment, or share on anything that they have. And you do that. The 180 strategy is you find 90 people and you leave your 2 cents on everyone's page. And as much as I love politics, I keep politics off LinkedIn. It's been very, very hard for me. Very, very hard. I keep that to Facebook, but whatever. Because of the bias, it's, but you keep it on neutral subjects that people are not going to have an opinion about. And unfortunately, especially in the US, politics is just too much right now. So I would stay away from that. But inspirational posts, talking about your journey. Like, I recently just had a post that went viral, and I wrote it in 5 minutes, and it was about my dad working in my company. And I've written so many things like that I thought were going to be amazing. And I wrote one story about my dad working with me and that he's 80 years old and is learning LinkedIn, and 15,000 likes. So you have to be a little bit vulnerable, but you want to keep it on stuff that people can relate to. And I would really stay clear out of politics.
Alison, that is fabulous. So listen, we have one question in here from, I want to say Kadaya, which is there such a thing as not being ready for LinkedIn yet? Like, I continually tell people I don't have LinkedIn because I don't have anything of note to write yet.
I mean, no.
Yeah, my answer would be that, Kadaya, and it's a very good question, but there are literally 1,000 volunteer organizations that would happily have an hour or two of your time a week. You could have next to your CV, Save the Children, the Rainbow Foundation, and an environmental thing or whatever appeals to you. And again, we spoke about, getting people's attention with the narrative you want. When I came back to the UK, I was in Dubai for 9/11, so I came back to the UK and had to restart my career. That's when I worked in recruitment for a bit. I went and worked with Prince's Trust. And I learned some great skills. I learned mentorship, I learned coaching, I learned how interventions, but I also got to put that I was volunteering with the Prince's Trust on my LinkedIn at the time, which was enough for people to say, "Oh, Peter, you're volunteering with the Prince's Trust." And I say, "Yeah, it's something that means a lot to me," because it does. And it's another great talking point. So I don't think there is such a thing as being not. I think there is such a thing as being not ready if you choose that you're not ready. But if as soon as you choose you are ready, then you are. So it's just a case of saying, yes, I'm ready. And yeah, as we said at the beginning, you're not going to be the polished article. You're not going to be the finished thing, but that's not the goal here. Unless you're a barista going for that VP role that Alison has, then then that's different. If the roles that, as I understand it from David, that are being lined up here and that are being talked about, it's not an expectation that you are the finished article that has 20 years worth of experience. That's not what this is. People are looking for heart, soul, courage, grit, determination, drive. You can demonstrate all of those skills without a CV of experiences easily.
Yeah. And I like to talk a lot about social capital, which is social capital is that I myself might not know that much, but I know people who do, right? I know Peter, I know Alison, I know Lindsay, I know Stu, I know David. Immediately, my social capital, like I'm a wealthy guy from a social perspective because I know all these people. And you just have to connect with, Alison was saying like 90 people. I mean, you just have to connect with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, 100 people. Your social capital, like, you're a social capital billionaire if you connect with the right ones. And by the way, I say yes to pretty much everyone who's on this webinar. If you reach out to me, I'll say yes to. I don't say yes to everybody who reaches out, but if you're on this and I think I can help you in some way, then I'll say yes, basically. So, and I'm pretty sure these guys would as well. So you should definitely be doing that. And David, our time is moving. This is great. Like an hour has flown by and this is gold dust time.
I know. I feel like we keep, filling the docket and we go overtime, which means we just have more value to provide the next time, which is amazing.
Totally.
And one thing I'll just hit on with what Peter said about the chat here and people who have reached out to me on LinkedIn is I'm now friends or connected with a lot of you guys. Some of you actually wrote me messages, and each time I responded and said, well, what did you take out of this? What were some of your takeaways? To create a conversation with you. But what that led to was I had this event last Friday where I wanted a few of you folks to join. And it was who connected with me and actually messaged me that I had top in my list because I just looked at my chat and there you were. And so that's just something to keep top of mind as you're connecting with people. Share some stuff, ask them some questions, cause what Peter said is like that social dynamic. It is social media. So be a little social and keep it neutral, as Alison said. So it's all about just continuing conversations and building that platform. So
can I jump in here?
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't say this, David. I was like waiting to say proximity is power. So I'm like, wait, is he gonna, right? So the more people that you're connected to, the better chance. And I don't know if we're gonna talk about this, but I have to say this. Is if your only strategy right now is looking for jobs just online and you're not using LinkedIn to leverage your job search, you are missing out incredibly. In fact, I think applying for jobs is probably the biggest waste of time. And I'm using this analogy a lot. I've been saying this for years, is that if your only strategy for finding work is applying for jobs, it's the equivalent of looking for love only on Tinder. You have to expand outside. And most people are only going into these one avenues. Whereas I'm looking for people right now for companies that I'm working for. They're not applying for jobs, it's barista. They're like applying for positions that are different. You need to connect and leverage your network. And there's so much good on LinkedIn. There's so many companies that will hire you just because they don't have to go through your resume, right? So, you want to come from a place of how you add value. Don't spam a whole bunch of recruiters saying, hi, I'm going around the other way. Like that doesn't work either. But you really do need to leverage your network and show value first. Then you'll be able to have so much more. So I love how you brought that up, David, how the people who followed through, got invitations to these special things. You weren't even I know you weren't thinking about that, but that was the result. When you
I'm always thinking about that. No, I'm just kidding.
But like when you finish an interview, right? And you send a thank you letter, like you guys can see my office. I have almost every thank you letter from every candidate that has ever sent me one for 10 years that I have been doing this. I can't throw them away. I can't. So how do you think I'm going to, do you think I remember everyone? Of course I did, because they took 2 seconds to write, thank you, Allison. It goes so far. So use that as leverage. Those are things that can really help you grow your career, and they cost nothing, like nothing. And they has such an impact, and people always forget about that. So make sure that you guys.
I actually changed my mind once because of a thank you letter.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going, nah, it's not the right guy for me. It just doesn't feel right. And I got this really, really heartfelt letter thanking me for the time and the feedback I'd given them, and appreciates that. He said, I appreciate I probably haven't got the role because I don't feel it was optimal, but I would really appreciate your feedback. And I read it about 9 o'clock at night on the way out, and called him on his mobile and went, do you want another shot of this? And he went, I desperately do. And I went, okay, come and see me tomorrow morning, and let's go out for coffee. Let's break the office environment. Let's go and have a chat. Because there was something there. Like every opportunity to follow up in a heartfelt, meaningful way should be taken in as many ways as possible.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. I remember once, 1986, and I was interviewing at this really high kind of powered set of chambers for just all I wanted was a 6-month internship. And my academics weren't that great, and I was a black guy, I had the wrong name. The whole thing was just like a mess, right? It wasn't, for these guys, it wasn't going to happen. And it was a bunch of, very posh white judges, and I was just like, this wasn't happening. And this is a different one to the other story that I sometimes tell about when I didn't get a job. But this time, at the end of it, they basically spent the whole interview basically saying, but why are you even here? Because you're not up, when we look at it, like, it's bizarre that you've even interviewed for this job. Like, why are you here? Then I'd explain, they'd be like, yeah, but why have you come to us? We're like a great set, and you're like so terrible. Like, why are you even here? Anyway, at the end of it, it was Christmas Eve. And at the end of it, I walked up to each of them, shook their hand, and said, thank you so much for seeing me. I know I wasn't the right guy for the job, but thank you. And I left. And I got a phone call the next day, and they said, okay, you got the job. It's just an internship, right? And many, many months later, one of the guys there kind of confided in me. He basically said, one of the guys who'd interviewed me, he said, you know why you got that job? Because there's no way normally we'd have hired you. He said it was because you said thank you. We all basically beat you up. And then at the end of it, you shook our hands and you said thank you. And I wish them happy Christmas. And you wished us all happy Christmas as you walked out. And we were like, you know what? Yeah, let's give the guy a chance. It's interesting. It's this point about manners and just saying thank you, whether you write it, whether you say it, you just find a way, and it's amazing how many people just never do that in some way, shape, or form. So totally couldn't agree more. David, time is moving. We got to go. Let's do this.